Well, this is the first time I've ever been to your beautiful country, Egypt, and I'm so happy and excited to be here because it is a place I've always wanted to come to, and I'm so anxious to get to see as much of it as I can while I'm here, but we're also teaching a workshop and meeting a lot of people. But through the workshop, I'm getting to see a lot of Cairo. And tomorrow, in fact, we're doing a little walkabout in Old Cairo, which I can't wait for, because, you know, we've seen so much about Egypt in the films and in movies and travel episodes, but it's not the same as actually being here. So I'm really happy to be here. It fulfills all my dreams, really. I've been a photographer for quite some time. And I have to say, I've had a life I never expected to have because of photography. I've worked in 70 countries. I've covered war and conflict, and I've photographed fashion, and I've told a lot of stories for National Geographic Magazine, everything from a story on war letters to several science stories, which I actually love a lot, to cultural stories and things like that. So I've had a really wonderful career. I have had a life I never expected to have because of photography. But besides taking pictures, I also like to teach workshops, and I mentor a lot of people. I really like to encourage other people in being creative and thinking outside the box and things like that. But I've been also a photo editor at Associated Press. I was the first woman photo editor they hired in New York. And I know, really crazy. And then I've been a director of photography at the Miami Herald, which was a wonderful thing. That was a lot of fun to do. I did it for 4 years, and then I missed being out and about. So I came back out to continue to tell stories. So I have to say, photography has been extremely generous to me, and I'm still photographing. I think I have to credit my mother for raising me to look at each day as a gift. And she was a scientist, and so science is all about discovery. And she always encouraged me to be looking at things in a new way, and always encouraged me to look at not only the large things, but the very small things, because everything big is made up of tiny things. And so in that sense, there's lots of different kinds of stories and lots of different kinds of things to consider and to see and to understand. And I also think that photography is the universal language. This is what keeps me so excited about it. It's a universal language. Everybody can understand it. We can all look at a picture and think, oh, it's family. We can look at a picture and say, oh, this is what people are eating. We all eat something. And we can look at the history of a place, and we can learn so much about each other. It doesn't matter if we know how to read, because we can read the picture. And we see in photography how much more we're alike. I think it's photography is, what is it called? Diplomatic. It's a diplomacy. It brings us together to see that we can get along and that we can appreciate each other in ways that we sometimes forget to do, I think. So I think it's just the greatest gift to the human race, actually. You know, every day is an opportunity to learn something new. And I think right now, especially, there's so many things going on in the world, and it gives us a chance to pause a little bit and spend more time learning about things. I'm particularly interested in science. I don't have the brain of a scientist, but I do have the imagination. And you know, Einstein, the wonderful Albert Einstein, once said that imagination was more important than knowledge, because you can have the knowledge of something, but if you don't have the imagination on how to use that knowledge, then what's the point? And I love that, because maybe I'm not as knowledgeable about some things as other people are, but I can say I have the imagination. I think that's, for me, been a very important aspect in my life, is to have a wild imagination. I mean, I can see something and make up a story about it. Or I can look at somebody else's pictures and say, oh, you know what? Here's a story that I can imagine from looking at your pictures. So I like that, and I write a lot. And I'm always trying to put imagination into my pictures so that I'm not just doing one thing, but I'm every day trying to make something look more than it is, because, you know, that's what an imagination does. We see the possibilities in things and not the limitations so much. One of the reasons I'm so excited to be here is that I'm teaching a workshop. It's called Daring to See the World in a New Way. So it's all about what I was just talking about. And if you think about it, in this moment, the world is changing and has changed so drastically. And we need to learn to see it in a new way so that our images can do their work, their job, which is that some things never change, but we have to make pictures that are a little bit different so that people don't feel like they've seen them already, and they're able to change minds, to inform people, to solve problems, to introduce us to each other. And besides that, I'm doing some portfolio reviews, which I love doing because I love to look at photographs. And I already know my photographs, what they look like, but I'm so anxious to see what people do with this little frame, you know, that we have. And so I'm going to be doing that, and I'm going to make a presentation, and then I'm going to get to have a conversation alongside Mr. Shahudel, who is coming from Bangladesh, and he's a master. So it's pretty exciting here, and I'm meeting so many wonderful people, and especially younger people who I just adore them. They're like the fresh water that's come into a very stagnant pond, and I think they revive everything. So I'm really happy to be able to meet them. So yesterday was the first day of the workshop that I'm teaching, and so I looked at a lot of the work that the students brought to show me, so I could see what level they were at and what interested them and how they can talk about their work. And then I gave them some assignments, and I showed them a lot of work by various photographers, and I talked about my own work. And so I was a little bit worried that I had overwhelmed them, because I keep telling them that the most important thing is that they use their imaginations, and that they break all the rules, and that they think outside the box. And overnight I was a little bit worried that maybe they might have some issues with that, just because I'm in a different culture, so I don't know if how that culture thinks about such things. But I was so happy and excited when they came to class today. This is the first day I've seen work that they've done. And they worked very hard, and everybody came in with something really extraordinary. I was really thrilled. I was so proud of them. They really worked hard, and they did these things that I had suggested, and they were wonderful, and they were excited too, because they were doing things that they had never done before. So this is so exciting, I have to say. It's wonderful. I love teaching. I do love teaching. I did it full time for a while. I wouldn't want to do that again. But I like to teach workshops. They're like brief, intense love affairs in a way. I get excited because when you teach, you can change somebody's life. You can give them new ideas to think about. You can encourage them to be confident and to be daring. And it can really be life-changing for people in the best way, you know. And so that's very exciting. I think that's the reason to teach. Plus, when I teach workshops, it's just like for 5 or 6 days, so you can meet a lot of new people this way. And sometimes I stay in touch with some of the participants who take my workshops, and I try to continue to help move them forward. So you make a lot of new friends that way. Well, there are some photographers who would disagree with me on this, but I say break all the rules. Photography can be about anything, and it can be everything, and it's only we who hold it back because we think it has to be certain things. So a lot of people think if it's not this, it's not valuable. But I think there's so many different ways to tell stories and to show the world. And I would also say, if you want to get ahead in this business, which is already overcrowded, but you can make a space for yourself. And the best way to do that is to either do a long-term project, which is what editors are really looking for, because in a long-term project, you can see how people deal with, how a photographer does their research, how they're thinking, how they deal with people, how they understand that photographs can be about details as well as landscapes, as well as portraits, that a long-term project shows a photo editor or a director of photography or a designer how you tell a story, how you deal with people, what your ideas are, how you put something together, and if it really has some meaning and some merit. And so I always suggest that. Or if you don't want to do that, then you develop a style of portraiture, for example, because everybody needs portraits, every publication, and people are always looking for the next great portrait photographer. So if you can specialize in something in a crowded business, this really will garner some attention for you and shine a little bit of light on your work and on you. One of my favorite photographers is a young Russian woman named Evgenia Abrugeeva. She is amazing, and she photographs themes along, not loneliness so much, but isolation. But the look of her pictures, they have a certain color palette, and there's a tenderness to them that is very unique to her. And she's just the nicest person. I really love her work. I really love the work of Matt Black, who's an American photographer who has done a really remarkable long-term project called The Geography of Poverty, where he travels across the United States and he goes to cities where the majority of the population live below the poverty line. And this is, everybody thinks America is such a rich country, and we are, but there are places where there's a lot of poverty, and his work it's very tender. You can be a great photographer, but if you're not a nice person, forget it. It's not just about the pictures you take, it's about the kind of person you are. And I can say this, I'm not the best photographer in the world at all. There are lots of people who are better than I am. But I learned a long time ago that if you're genuine and you really treat people with respect, that this takes you a lot further. And I have to say, having a career as long as I've had, it's not just because of the pictures I make, but because of the way that I operate, because of the way I present myself to people, and because of the way I treat people. It's really about respect. And I'm very fond of saying, it's never about us. It's always about them. It's always about the people in our pictures. And that's my philosophy. So we have to treat them with respect.